Okay, I'm pretty sure we're live. All right, where's that little button that says we're live?
Says it on mine.
It says we are?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I always have us talking beforehand. All right, welcome you guys. Happy Thursday afternoon. I'm sorry I haven't been on a live in a long time, but we have had so many great successes with our athletes over the fall season with races. I just wanted to start bringing people on and sharing their experience. Honestly, to just show what's possible, because a lot of times people think Ironman is not something doable for them, Ben included. And he's going to share his journey today with us, because literally as of February of this year, he said he would never do an Ironman, and here it is, November, and he has completed an Ironman in California with an amazing time. So let's go ahead and welcome Ben Carter.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So introduce yourself, tell us what you do for a living, and yeah, a little bit of background in your triathlon journey, right?
Okay.
Before this year, yeah.
So I'm an attorney here in Miami. I've been living here for just about 20 years now. I went to undergrad at UM, stuck around for law school, and then just never left. And now I've lived here longer than I lived in Kentucky, where I grew up. Um, my triathlon journey really starts there. I was thrown into the pool at an extremely young age. I mean, I can't remember a time when I wasn't a swimmer. As far as being a kid, was a pretty good age grouper, but gave that up a little bit before high school, and then around I don't know, a year or two out of law school, I started running. Just doing something to do to keep fit. I ran a couple local 5Ks and a 10K, and I'm like, all right, well, let me try a half marathon. Did a couple half marathons. Did my first marathon about 10 years ago. And all that time, I kind of knew it was only a matter of time before I would eventually try out a triathlon, just because I had the swim background,
Yeah.
had very little cycling experience other than just like riding around as a kid. But between the swim and the run, I figured, okay, well, that's a good start.
Yeah.
So I did a couple local races. I think my first race was in 2017, and that one ended up not actually being a full triathlon because the it was up in Palm Beach and the water was super rough that day, so they canceled the swim. We just ran down the beach instead.
Mhm.
But I did a couple. I did Miami Man in I think 2018 or 19 would have been my first actual triathlon. Did
Okay.
a couple more before COVID hit, and that was kind of a blessing because that gave me a lot more time to spend on the bike. And that was when I really, when I was training for these first few races, I was barely doing enough bike training to finish the bike. I didn't really like riding outside during the week. I didn't have a bike trainer at the time, so I was pretty much just riding once a week just to have that base level of fitness to even finish the, 20 whatever miles it was for mostly I was doing international distance races or international or Olympic distance races.
And cool. What
But
kind of bike?
then
Yeah, was it a road bike or a trail
no, it
bike?
was it was a triathlon bike. The
Okay.
first race, the one that was ended up being a duathlon, I did on a road bike, like a Target style road bike. Then I bought an old triathlon bike. It was like a 2002 or 3 Quintana Roo Kilo, so aluminum bike, you know, external cable routing, old Shimano gearing.
Right.
But it got the job done, and it's actually still being ridden. I sold it to a friend of a friend who I did this. This is a kind of an aside. I did a charity ride in June of this year from Miami to Key West, raising money for the Sylvester Cancer Center.
Yeah.
And the friend of a friend
He rode that bike?
rode that bike all the way from Miami to Key West, and everyone was commenting the whole way down, like, there's no way this bike is going to make it, but it made it. I mean, and the guy I bought it from had done a full Ironman on it, so it's
QR was my first bike too. A QR was
yeah.
I had a titanium QR.
Oh,
So
nice. Well,
yeah.
it's definitely, made well because it's
Yeah.
20 something years later and it did a 170-mile ride with no problems.
I think they're like the
Um,
original, aren't they the original tri bike? I feel like
I
they
think
are.
they're the original one that like that's what they focused on making.
Right.
Like they were the first
That was that's
exclusive
their number.
tri-bike
Yeah,
brand.
they don't have road bikes. They have only tri.
Yeah, yeah. They do now, but yeah, when they started, they were only making triathlon bikes.
Yeah. So
But so
then how did we get connected? I know you were on one of my challenges one time because I remember you participating on like on a Facebook challenge I did. I don't know if it was like a drill,
yeah, yeah. So
right?
I
That's
had
when I met you.
you had done a couple clinics. Like the first Miami Man I did, you were doing the race clinic. I
Okay.
feel like at least one other race. It might have been the Las Olas up in Fort Lauderdale that City Bikes does. I think you did the race clinic for that one. So I was aware of Full Circle. And then it would have been 2021. So like during 2020, I was cycling a lot more. Started watching a lot of cycling and just spending a lot more time on the bike, a lot more time outside. I got a smart trainer so I could ride indoors, and my cycling level just went
Through the
way
roof.
up just
Yeah.
from the spending more time on the bike.
Yeah.
And it would have been like March or April, or no, maybe later, like sometime in the spring of 2021
That we,
was when I signed up for my first 70.3. And then
okay.
later that summer, I was like, I need a coach for this because I don't have time to put together the training. I don't know what I'm doing. I had
Which
also watched
70.3? Which
this
70.3?
was Florida, the one in Haines
Oh,
City.
okay.
But
Yeah.
I'd
So,
also watched my wife, who is a extremely talented runner, start working with a coach and start doing structured training. And she was already very fast, but she got so much faster. So I'm like, all right, this is what I need to do.
right.
And I was aware of Full Circle, so it just made sense to talk to you. And then yeah, you had a I don't remember what the challenge was, but I remember being on some Facebook chats, talking about running. And I remember one thing was like, try to, when you're warming up or cooling down on the run, try to breathe with your mouth closed and see what happens. And then, talking about FTP and riding on Zwift and stuff. And so then I did the week free trial, and the rest is history. Signed up, did the
Yeah.
first 70.3 and kept going from there.
Yeah, so I am into numbers, right? And that does scare some people. Like I've actually had feedback lately that, oh, I'm not good enough to train with full circle coaching. But that's not true, right? Everybody can train with full circle coaching no matter what level you are. But I'm going to teach you how to pay attention to your numbers because if you're not paying attention to your numbers, even the most basic race can become hard, right? Knowing what
Yeah.
your ranges are can help you have a better race on race day, right? So it doesn't have to be so crazy, but I kind of knew that you were into the numbers, and I think that's probably what you attracted you to me also, is because I do talk about the numbers a lot and you already were into that. So for me, numbers don't lie. The numbers are the truth. And when we measure you as a baseline and we train and then we reassess and your numbers are better, it's a win and you feel it and you know that you're on track to improving and keep on getting better, right? So yeah, I appreciate that. What was your time? Do you remember your time at the Haines City half?
It was 5 hours, 30 minutes, and some odd seconds, but like exactly 5:30.
Yeah, I remember we went live after that too. So there's another live in my library with us about
Yeah.
that. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So I remember asking you in 2022, like, are you gonna do an Ironman? Nope. I remember asking you in 23, are you gonna do an Ironman? Nope. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's keep working on you getting faster, getting stronger, marathons, half marathons, whatever you wanted to do, right? And I know that, why don't you tell the story? Because this year, for whatever reason, you're like, okay, it's time. I'm ready.
Yeah.
we we had the
Well, yeah,
group.
I had
Yeah,
no desire and to do it. And mainly it was the idea of being out there for 12 hours or 12-ish hours that just I had no desire to race for that long. Especially after I did my first half, I was like, that's as far as I ever want to go.
right.
And even last year when I did Wilmington Ironman 70.3 North Carolina, I finished that and I said, that's it. That I don't need to go any farther than that.
What was your time there?
Like 5:20 something. I want to say like 5:28. It wasn't a whole lot faster
Right.
than 3 years ago, but I attribute that to not knowing as much as I know now about nutrition,
Right.
specifically like in race nutrition and making sure you're getting enough carbs.
Yeah.
But that's a different story.
We're gonna get into that though. We are. We're
Yeah.
gonna talk about that.
So it was probably March, late February, early March of this year. I had kind of let my fitness drop in January. Things got really crazy with work, and just life got in the way. And I know my CTL score on Training Peaks was probably as low as it's been since I've been training with you.
Right.
So at first I was like, okay, you just need to I set up a race calendar for myself, all sprint and Olympic distance races. But my thought was, you just got to get consistent with the training again and get your fitness back up.
Yeah.
And then people in our group, especially on like the long Saturday ride, started talking about, oh, I'm gonna do California. So and so's gonna do California.
Yeah.
And it was really when Mary Liz said she was gonna do it. That was the first time I ever got like a little bit of itch.
Right.
There had always been a part of me that was like, I would love to do it just to check the box,
Yeah.
but that wasn't enough to motivate me to
Do
A,
it.
to do a race of that length, and then B, I knew that the training is like, it's basically taking on a second job, the
Yeah.
amount of time that you have to commit. And so that just I wasn't ready to do that. And then Mary Liz said she was going to do it. And I was like, you know what? I finally have like a little bit of an itch to do it. And at that point, I knew she was going, I think Jessica was going to race. There were 5 or 6 people
Yeah.
in Full Circle, and then like 5 or 6 people that are adjacent to Full Circle
Yeah.
that were going. I looked at the race course. It's a downriver swim. It's a relatively flat bike and run, and it's a good time of year. I mean, you have to train through the Miami summer, which is a blessing and a curse, but the race is done before the holidays,
Yeah.
which
That was good. Yeah,
when
you
I
were
did my
upset
first
about that. I
70.3, I
remember
was like,
that. Yeah.
I have to have the race done before the holidays because I had to do my super day for
Yeah.
that race 2 days after Thanksgiving, which
Yeah.
just was
Didn't
no
work
fun.
out. That's not fun.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And
So
then
so you
but I also thought, if I'm going to do it, I want to be able to devote the time to training, and I have that time. I mean, it's still a balance with work, but in terms of like my wife and I don't have kids,
yeah.
I don't have a ton of time commitments like that I would have to balance. I was like, the stars are aligning for me
Yeah.
to do it, so this was the
Yeah.
one.
This was the one. And I was so excited to hear you say that because I knew, you did want to, but you were just unsure about it. And honestly, having the group support really helps when you're not out there by yourself. Yeah, you did all your runs by yourself, most of them. Most of the swims you actually did by yourself, but on the bike rides, we were together. You would hang with Coach Dennis and the whole group. You
Yeah.
guys all your 100-mile rides together. And I feel like that's really where the support comes in, where you're not out there alone. But I do want to speak to the fact that in your mind, you're like, I don't want to be out there for 12 hours versus when you actually finished the race, you were like, oh, I did that, right? Now, don't get me wrong. We know the day is hard, right? But did you change your perception of what was possible for yourself as far as
Oh,
that?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back, even during the race, you don't feel the length of it in terms of it's the whole, like, I was
All day.
starting at 7 something a.m. and I finished at 7 something p.m. Like,
Right.
you don't feel like it takes up the whole day
Right.
when you're
So
in the
present.
race.
Yeah, you're so present and in the moment. And this is for people that have trained because there are plenty of people that show up and do an Ironman and they have not put in the time. And it makes me sad because they really have a miserable time. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? They're suffering out there. But the way you guys suffered, because everybody had an amazing race of the whole group, everybody killed their times. Like they all came in within like 20 minutes of their goal time, which is really, really good. But like when you're in the moment and you've trained, you're just tapping into your body's own ability and making sure you're fueling, which we're going to get to. And like this whole transformation kind of happens that you're like, holy shit, I'm doing this, right?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a video of you on the run. Somebody had shot while I was watching from here in Miami. I'm like, oh, Ben looks awesome. Every single person, I was like, in that group, the 5 of you guys, you just did the training so spot on. You didn't hit 100%, right? But it was definitely 80-20. 80% of the time you hit
Yeah.
all your workouts. You practice your nutrition. You changed things up when things weren't working, right? There was a time where you might have overreached. We backed off and we babied that situation and we did some other training to replace it so you didn't lose your fitness. But your fitness basically just climbed the entire time. And I just want to speak to the fact that even though, you know, the Ironman seems so daunting, when you plan and when you prepare and when you really do the training on a training plan that's right for you, you don't feel that overwhelming sense of this is not possible anymore. You feel like, okay, I've got this. And okay, so let's go back to some of your training modalities because you basically were strong on the swim, the bike, and the run. You don't have a limiter, right? There's nothing
Yeah.
like super weak on. But don't get me wrong, I saw you the pool the other day. Like there's always something to work on, right? So we did do a couple video analysis and we did test you along the way to make sure you were keeping up with your swim improvement and all that good stuff, hitting your long swims at the pool. I'm also from so it's nice when I always get to see you there. But then the bike, you know, hitting those longer rides and looking at your numbers and your FTP. You mentioned in your Rockstar questions that I send you that we're going to send out that you really you didn't have any improvements in speed. But I want to challenge you on that because I totally disagree because you wouldn't be on the podium at first place in a couple of your sprints and Olympics along the journey if your speed had not improved as well.
Yeah, I guess what I meant was there were no huge jumps
Right.
because I mean the training wasn't
Yeah, it's
focused
not geared
on
for that. Yeah.
short distance speed.
Yeah, we're
So
not
like
working.
my FTP improved especially from like beginning of February. I tested and it had dropped maybe like 20 watts from the last test.
Yeah,
And then when I tested again 6 weeks later after consistency, it was back where
it
it was
was.
supposed to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like, you know, a lot of long course athletes refuse to do short course races. And I just think that's the biggest mistake because what those little tidbits of short course racing do for you is it gives you a VO2 max workout, right? Or a lactate threshold workout that
Yeah.
otherwise you really wouldn't push yourself for because in your mind you're like, well, I'm not going to go that fast on race day. So why should I do that now, right? But what happens is your overall fitness improves. Every single zone goes higher, right? So
Yeah.
your zone 5 becomes your zone 4. So then on race day, you're not out there forever during an Ironman. So my goal is for every Ironman athlete I train, I don't want you to be out there more than 14 hours if we can help it, right? There might be extenuating circumstances, but 12 is like my sweet spot. I think anybody can really do a 12-hour, even if you don't have a strength, a swim, a bike, or a run, if you prepare properly. But like I said, you were consistent across the board. So I knew a sub 12 was totally possible for you, especially with the downriver swim, right? So let's also talk about your shoes because you're also a fan of zero drop shoes, not
Yeah.
high shoes. And it was cool when Ben started with me. I didn't realize he had already started running. He was started when in the beginning, he started an Ultra, which is the brand that I love, that has zero drop from heel to toe. But they have gone to more cushion, which not a big fan of. But you kind of still kept it low. So why do you feel like that's beneficial to have a zero drop shoe?
To be honest, I can't really remember why I started with it. I think it had to do I before I started running a little bit more seriously, I was running in some New Balance minimalist shoes. I can't remember what they were called. They weren't the toe ones, but
Okay.
they had almost no cushioning.
Really? Yeah, I didn't know they made one.
And so I was already sort of going down the path of like the natural
Running.
type of running shoe where it's
Mhm.
not gonna, not a stability shoe that's gonna alter your stride a lot, and then not a lot of
Cushion.
cushioning, and then even when you do have cushioning, that it's completely flat so that you're. I also, when I first started, I definitely had problems with heel strike, and I
Mm.
know that a shoe with a big heel is only gonna
Make it
encourage
worse.
that. So that's what initially attracted me to ultras, and
Okay.
then I've kind of just stuck with them throughout the years. I do run in some other shoes, but I've told you, I always try to get the lowest drop possible.
Yeah,
So a
four
lot of
millimeter.
companies, like
Yeah,
4 millimeter, yeah, I
four
have some
millimeter length.
Sauconys that I love to train in,
Yeah.
some Asics, but they're all like nothing is more than a 4 millimeter drop.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the way to go. I don't know. Did you have any injuries along the way? I know your shin is sore right now from the race
Yeah.
itself, but before that, did you have any foot or ankle injuries?
For this training cycle, I didn't.
I
In
mean,
the
that
past,
says a lot though. That
yeah,
honestly, that says a lot because we do the strength training, right? We do stuff to help you stay strong and prevent that. But I too, I really, really believe the shoes help. Having your foot can be a foot in a zero drop shoe and a
Yeah.
flat shoe, right? You're less likely to have injuries, in my opinion. I'm definitely arguing with all the time about, and it's not for everyone, right? Someone can't just walk out the door and switch to zero drop shoes, right? Especially if you're
Yeah.
those new ones. Have you seen the new on ones, the spray on?
No, but I mean I've seen some of their shoes lately and they just look to me they just look ridiculous.
They're
But,
ridiculous.
you
And
know,
like,
to
there's
each his
no
own.
way. Yeah, there's no way you're not falling off of that shoe. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it just goes against common sense for me. But anyway, so I'm happy you didn't have any run injuries along the way. And your trajectory to the volume that we did, did you get a 20 miler in? I can't remember.
Yeah, just the one. That was actually when it was a couple of days after that was when the I mean, I'm gonna call it a stress reaction. It definitely didn't progress to a stress fracture, but that's when the stress reaction in my shin started. That's when I first felt it.
Okay.
Um, but that was honestly kind of a perfect time for it to happen because I only had
Yeah, you were done after that
two
pretty
like medium
much.
distance runs the next weekend, and then it was taper.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
also knew from those runs that if this bothers me on race day, I can run through it. Like
that bad.
it's not that bad. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And then as far as the long rides, I know the first one everybody was like, like that first 100 miler, I always get the text. I don't know about this, or like that
Yeah.
was way harder than I thought it was going to be. And I always say, relax, breathe. Your next one will feel that much easier. It like gets 10% better every single time. And that's why I do recommend starting early enough for training for an Ironman that you can get at least 5 in, because
Yeah.
your mental attitude about it, your body, your crotch, everything can handle those miles much better if you've done it a couple times without the pressure of doing it on the race day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You just get more comfortable every time. And I mean, I started even earlier because I was getting ready for the Key West ride. So
Okay.
I did
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I think I only did one Century ride before that, but that one was like I went to met up with the group on a Saturday and did I think we did like 60 miles and then I did the last 40 by myself. So
Okay.
that was back in May. So I was already in May starting with that distance. And then honestly the ride to Key West too
Yeah.
was great
Good.
preparation because we were with a big group. So I mean like
In the
when I
wind.
look back at the power numbers that day, my average power was like 100 watts.
You know why,
But
right? It's tailwind the whole way.
oh, well, we actually had a headwind.
Really?
This was right after that system came through that dropped so much rain in June. So
Oh,
it
okay.
wasn't too bad. We only had a slight headwind and we
Okay.
didn't get rained on. We thought we were going to get rained on all day and we
Yep.
didn't have a drop of rain. So we were lucky. But
Yep.
that was good because I mean, we started at 4:30 in the morning or something and didn't get to Key West until late afternoon. So like
Oh,
riding time, I think it was 8 or 9 hours, and then total time with all the stops, it was probably closer to 12.
wow.
Um, so that was good because it
Mental.
was
It's
yeah,
mental.
mentally
Yeah.
it was as long or longer than I was going to be out there for an Ironman. And I remember when we were riding through the Keys, getting to 112 miles and like
Clicking.
mentally checking like what would I feel like if I had to get off the bike and run a marathon right now?
You're probably like,
Because
"F
you're
no."
gonna have to do that in a few months.
Yeah, but you did have time for sure. And that
Mhm.
was probably felt daunting at the moment. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So let's talk about the actual race itself, because we haven't really gotten to the details of the race. And obviously, it was, yes, brutal training for the winter. I mean, through the summer here with all the heat, but you guys had an advantage because the water was going to be cold and the temperature was about 10 degrees cooler
yeah,
than here during the day, and even a little bit colder in the morning. But even with all of that, like let's just walk through the race. How did it go for you? Where you felt obviously prepared when you showed up, and having the whole team there was also very helpful, right?
yeah. Having everybody there, I mean, like you said, through the summer, having the group to train with, having people that were on
The same
the
plan.
same schedule as you and going through the same things as you was
Key.
just, I don't want to say it made it easier, but it was a great support to have.
It's like your guys are all suffering together.
Exactly, yeah. It's, it was a bonding experience. We all went through something traumatic together.
Yes.
Um, but Yeah, so and it was the same thing with having everybody in town for the race. We
Yeah,
had Jessica, who was no longer racing, and JJ as our super Sherpas. And I told
best.
you when
They're
when
the
we did
best.
our
Yeah,
recap, that was invaluable
yeah.
because number one, you had them there to help you with all the logistics, and then number two, they're both
So
very
see,
experienced
yeah,
Ironman athletes. So,
yeah. They've been with
and
me for
none of
like
us had
10
done it.
years.
It was basically all of our first time. So
Right.
having them there to like calm us down was a huge help.
That was just a universal gift because,
Yeah,
well, Coach Dennis was there and he's raced before.
that's true. Dennis
He
is,
had
yeah,
one race.
Dennis has done one
He
before.
was also racing, and to have someone
Yeah.
there that's not racing that has all the experience, like they've been with me forever. And so it's so nice because they have so much experience that they can give you all the tips and tricks and basically anything that I would recommend, they would be saying to you too. So it's like having a mini coach there because they were
Mhm.
also supportive and they just show up for everybody anyways. They're such great
Yeah.
people. Yeah. Okay, so talk about the swim. How'd it go?
The swim went pretty well. The water was definitely chilly. I
Yeah.
think it was 59 in the first river on race day, and then I think they said like 55 when you
Yeah.
got into the Sacramento River.
Yeah.
And I was really glad I was able to do the practice swim because that helped
Prepared you.
prepare me for the shock of initial 5 minutes in the water.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the wetsuit,
Um,
you're fine. I mean, the water you actually feel really good when the
mhm.
water is cold, but you're in a wetsuit. But the water hitting your face and then your hands and feet was what I was glad I was able to do beforehand. So I was at least exposed to it and knew, okay, after 200 yards, I'm going to be used to it. And then you just swim.
So I heard that
Um,
were they allowing people to wear booties?
they were, yeah.
Yeah. So wow. So you just opted not to do that?
It's not even something that had crossed my mind.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I
I've,
was wondering. I think it would feel really weird to kick with those booties and actually cause drag. Like I don't know how
yeah,
much
I think so
help
too.
you know what I mean?
And
So
I mean, my feet did get numb, but
yeah,
that wasn't,
part of it though. That's part of
that
it.
was part of it. Yeah, that wasn't really a problem.
So I heard that some of you guys struggled because your hands were like not working out of the
That
swim.
was probably my biggest struggle of the whole race
Yeah,
in
because
terms of
I think
time.
we do the tri-calc 3, right? And
Yeah.
we talked about having at least 10 minutes. That was everybody's goal. But when I started seeing 15 minutes, 20 minutes in transition one, I was like, uh-oh, something's going on. And then after the fact, I found out that everybody had like claw fingers and couldn't put their socks on and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Mine was 18 minutes in T1,
yeah.
which I was, like you said, I had budgeted 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was trying to get, I was wearing a long sleeve bike jersey that I put on over my tri suit. So trying to get that on was a struggle, trying to get my arms through it and like get it. Anything that required fingers
Yeah.
was difficult. So getting the sleeves adjusted, getting the zipper up, getting my nutrition in the jersey,
Yeah.
everything took twice as long as it should.
So like in previous races, like I had a couple athletes race in Spain at the World Championships, and they knew it was going to be like 40 degrees when they got out of the water. But I had them have like a thermos. I should have had you guys have like arm
Yeah.
warmers or thermos that you could have put on, so that get them moving a little bit quicker. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about that extra 10 minutes or 9 minutes really was the difference between your goal time
Oh
and
yeah.
your finishing time. It was just getting unfrozen, you know what I
It
mean?
was T1 and then I slowed down a little bit on the second half of the marathon, but
On the
that
marathon.
was yeah, those were the two differences. But that T1 is where it's just like obvious
Yeah.
time to make up. But I
Yeah.
also think if the swim had just been in the American River, which was the first river
You would have been
that was a
fine.
little bit warmer,
Yeah.
I would have been fine. It was when you hit the confluence of the rivers. One thing was the current picked up, which was nice. So like I could tell from my watch, my pace went up at least like 10 to 15 seconds per
It
hundred.
was like 120 per 100, right?
Yeah, but then my that was where I got really cold. Like I got used to the American River, but then the Sacramento River was just
Brutal.
frigid.
Yeah. Okay, so you're out there on the bike and it's two loops and the long okay, this was the other thing is I was kind of bummed to see you and Mary Liz and Kim kind of start later in the day, as opposed to like Dennis who got in kind of like the first couple waves of the swim start. Just because this is a fact that some people don't really overlook. They're nervous about starting the race or whatever the case is, and they're afraid to get in the water or they're waiting for it to warm up a little bit. But what it does is it costs you because the wind always picks up on the bike, right? So
Yeah.
those people that were out there on the swim early actually had an easier bike race. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Did for sure. Your headwind was way less than especially that second loop. So that's another thing. Like next time, I definitely you're a good swimmer. Like you definitely want to get out there sooner, sooner, sooner. Uh,
Yeah.
Seed yourself higher so that you can get on the bike sooner and do what you can do. So yeah, definitely. I know I'm excited because I already know you told me you would maybe never do one again, but then I saw that you in your notes you said yes, you're going to plan on doing another one in 2026. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so the bike went as planned, nothing really eventful. But let's talk about nutrition because that is something that you did struggle with in the past with not eating enough and not thinking that you needed to eat enough.
Hmm.
And this is even though you don't choose the kind of nutrition that I like, right? I'm very one ingredient. You have tried the stuff that I like, but you found that it just didn't give you as much pack as the
Yeah.
stuff was on the race course, which is fine. I agree with it, but just no, don't eat that stuff if you don't have to.
Oh
Okay.
no, I don't.
Yeah, it doesn't have the
I've
best. Yeah, it doesn't
I
have the best
when I
ingredient.
got done with the race, I was like, I don't want to see a gel for like a week at least.
Exactly. And that genetically modified corn syrup is like the worst, right? It
Yeah.
is what it is. I'm not going to talk more. I'm not going to get into that right now, but I appreciate you were one of the athletes that really helps the other athletes realize more on an Ironman when you're actually moving is better. They're like, every 20 minutes, what are you talking about? I'm like, yes, sometimes you need carbs that
Hmm.
you have to train. You had to train your gut to do that. It's not like you could start
Oh
there.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I built up to it and it really came from listening to a lot more. Like I started listening to a
The
lot more
pros.
podcasts, yeah, and listening to what the pros were doing.
Yeah.
And I never got to that level. I mean, some of them are pushing these days, some of them are pushing 200 carbs an hour, which to
I don't
me
know
is
how.
just
I don't know
ridiculous. I
how.
don't know how
Well,
you have
honestly,
can
you
get all
know,
that
the
in the time. You just must be constantly eating.
eating, but also you can
But
see what happens when it goes awry. Like Christian
oh
Blumenthal.
yeah.
I mean, that was 100% because of all the shit he was trying to cram in so he could go as fast as possible. And that's what you have to be careful of, right? So for me, I felt like you did a really good job of finding what worked exactly for you and not overdoing it. Um,
Mhm.
and I think it worked out perfectly. But I just remember everybody saying 20 minutes. What do you mean he's having a gel every 20 minutes?
Yeah,
But
I just started paying attention a lot more. Like in the past, I was, I had a nutrition plan and I had like a schedule. It was usually every 30 minutes I was eating something, but I was not paying attention to
carbohydrates.
the numbers. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to the carbs I was getting. I'm
Yeah.
still not paying as much attention, but I'm at least aware of the amount of sodium I'm getting, throughout
Hmm.
the day and throughout training too. Because that's another thing I changed, and this was from listening to what the pros do, was fueling in training exactly like you're going to fuel in the race, especially in the more intense sessions. Because I always had, I mean, and this probably comes from having been an athlete, in the past for most of my life. The
They
old
don't
mantra was always eating is cheating,
right.
and
So
so I would
messed
always
up.
think, well, in training, I
So
want to
crazy.
like
Yeah.
have a little bit less, so then on race day I have more, and maybe that gives me a little bit of boost. But I think that's just doesn't make sense. You need to be used to what you're going to do to
Yeah.
know that your body can handle it. So like training my gut to handle all the carbs was crucial from the
Crucial.
training. And
Yeah.
then, just be fueling properly during workouts so that you don't feel like crap the rest of the day and take longer to
Okay.
recover was a
Yeah,
huge difference too.
and also delivering during the workout. If you're not fueling properly during the workout, you might not even last the
Yeah,
whole
you're not
workout
going
or
to get the
finish.
most out of it that you can.
Yeah, and your fitness will suffer, right? So
Yeah.
the sports nutrition has to happen along the way. It can't just be happening the last 3 weeks before the race that you're dialing everything in. It's actually like from day one, you're finding out
Yeah.
what works for you and tweaking that recipe along the way as the distance gets longer, where you need more salt, you need less carbs, more carbs, whatever the case, more water. That was another one. I remember Kim, which hopefully we'll have her on soon, but she was like the first day she showed up and she had like way too much calories and she actually felt really, really sick. So you can overdo it too, right? And so, always remembering to have some plain water. Plain water is also very, very important to stay hydrated and not be overwhelmed by all that sugar, right?
Yeah.
And then what about
And
caffeine? Did you use any caffeine as I always recommend?
yep. And that's one thing I've always used.
Yeah.
And it's not so much for the boost of energy because I drink so much coffee that I don't feel caffeine. But yeah, it's the mental focus, the way it helps you. When you're in your fourth or fifth hour on the bike, it's
Yeah,
easy to zone out and not be paying attention. And number one, that's you don't want to be doing that because you want to make sure that you're staying on track with your race plan. And then also it's the safety issue of you need to be aware. And I mean,
definitely.
that applies doubly in training when you're not on a closed course that only has athletes on it.
Yeah,
Um, Although I definitely did change up the caffeine a little bit in the race so that it was always
at the end.
towards the later portions of the bike and the run. Like in training, I would start, I would pretty
Sure.
much have a gel every 30 minutes on the bike when I was
Yeah,
training, like on
yeah.
our long rides. And starting with the second hour, I would have a caffeinated gel on the hour. So there was
Okay.
always like just
Yeah,
like 2 hours and 3 hours and 4 hours, I would have a caffeinated gel. And in the race, I switch it so it was like not until the third hour of the bike.
yeah.
And then I think I didn't have any caffeine until the second half of the marathon.
And I think that's really important because you can become like immune to the feeling and the bump that you actually need to have when you're just constantly having the caffeine come in. So that's definitely something I always recommend is caffeine, not caffeine in the first half of any portion of the race, but always that last portion just to help you get dialed in and ready and finish strong for the next event and or the finish line. So yeah. Okay, cool. So the run, we came down to the run. And honestly, your first couple miles, I was a little bit concerned because you're going a little fast.
Yeah.
And I was like, hold back, then hold
It's so
back.
hard. I mean, I was trying to hold back. This has happened to me in other races before where I feel like I'm holding back. I feel like I'm going slow, and then I look down at my watch and I'm like 30 seconds faster per mile than what I want to be running.
And that's 100% common for every single first time triathlete or Ironman athlete, even normal triathlon, because you just feel so good coming off the bike and you are feeling there's not your heart rate hasn't caught up to the intensity yet, right? Even for
Yeah.
the first 3 miles, there's a delay in how much it's actually taking out of you. And so your ego kind of fools yourself. Oh, I feel good. I'm gonna keep going at this pace, even though I never trained this fast off the bike. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going. And then usually the wall hits. But I did appreciate that you did dial it back, right? I saw you reining in, and then you just stayed pretty consistent. And like you said, there was a little bit of a dip, but then you were able to finish strong. So I'm
Yeah.
super, super excited. So anything to say about the run?
I would start slower the next time
Yeah,
because going into it, my PR in the marathon is 3:59 flat
right.
that I ran in 2016 when I was running a lot and I was doing some other cross training, but in no way was I anywhere close to as fit as I was for this race.
Yeah,
So going into this, I'm like, it's not, it's entirely possible I could run a PR in the
yeah,
marathon. And I got through the first half in under 2 hours. So I was thinking, okay, I kind of knew I was probably going to slow down just because, I mean,
fatigue.
from the first mile,
Yeah,
it hurt. Like, my legs were hurting like they wouldn't until mile 20 if it was just running a
right.
marathon fresh. So I suspected I was probably going to slow down, but I was like, I'm just going to ride this pace
Yeah,
as
right.
long as I can. Got through the first half in under 2 hours. So at that point, I'm thinking maybe I really can
Yeah,
run a PR. And then I don't know exactly when it was that
the wheels
I
came off.
started slowing down and like, that was always kind of like that would just be a bonus if I did that. But that I kind of let go of the idea of that being something I was going to do. And it was just like, okay,
Survive.
walk
Yeah.
the aid stations,
Mhm.
continue to fuel, and then just, go one step at a time and get to the finish line.
So you know how they always have like bone broth on the course and Coke. Did you imbibe?
Oh yeah.
Oh
So
yeah, right.
Coke, I discovered that it has magic powers
It
when we were
does.
doing our long rides, and we would stop at the McDonald's in Homestead
Yeah.
after we had done our loops around the speedway, and I would get a Coke. And I remember that first time I got one, I was like, "Oh, everything I've heard is true. This really does revive you." So I knew that I was gonna try to wait until at least like mile 15
Yeah, you
to
want to
have any
wait.
Coke.
You do. You
When
definitely want
yeah,
to wait because it doesn't help you. Like if you start at mile 5 already on the Coke, it won't help you at mile
yeah,
20 like it would have. And here I am, like health coach, holistic lifestyle coach, saying it's okay to drink Coke. But honestly, Coke, real Coke, has sugar in it, as opposed to Diet Coke, which is totally toxic. Like Coke
Yeah.
isn't healthy for you in any way. But if you're gonna have something that has caffeine and sugar, and you're bonking and you need energy, Coke is actually a good choice, right?
And it's easy on your stomach. So
Yes.
it's just a perfect thing to have late in a race. And then the bone broth too.
Yeah. The
You
salt,
know, I
salt
I
from the
know
bone.
a lot of people like they hear that and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't imagine." Like I didn't have that aversion to it. I could see the
Right.
appeal of it, but it was another one of those things that like you don't really know how good it is till you try it, and that really did like I don't want to say save me, but that was a
No, it does. It
huge
does.
thing of getting through those like mile 18 to 26
And
was
they
just
that's
I
why they put it
remember
out
the
there.
aid station getting it and I had it and I'm like, oh, I feel so much better.
Yeah, the amount of salt in the bone broth, that's what helps you, right? It's just like
Yeah.
and it's warm and it's
Yeah.
something and it's the opposite of all the sugar that you're drinking. So it's a win, right? It's a win-win between the Coke and the bone broth to or the yeah, to help you finish strong. And then hopefully you like you your stomach doesn't go bad, right? That's the one thing that you don't know what's going to happen on race day with all those many hours back to back to back with all that nutrition, but it's like a kind of a gamble, but the more you can practice it in training, the better. But so let's talk about how did it feel when you crossed the finish line?
It was it was pretty incredible. I mean, I was the whole week, not the whole week, the whole like few days when I was in Sacramento,
Mhm.
leading up to the race, it was very emotional just because
Yeah,
it was such a long
journey.
process training and I had put so much time and energy into it that, it was that feeling of all of that is, coming to fruition. All of that time and effort is paying off.
Yeah.
So I knew I was gonna probably break down when I crossed the finish line. And it wasn't like I was bawling, but like I was definitely like even when I got to the last quarter mile, I was starting to choke up a little bit and I held it together across the finish line, but then definitely shed a few tears just because it was
Yeah.
I mean, number one, I
Big
couldn't
deal.
believe I had actually finished it. I mean,
Ah,
like you said, I didn't think this was something I would ever do even 9 months ago.
right.
And then, yeah, just all of that, thinking about all that time and effort that had gone into it.
It's a big deal. It's a really, really
Yeah.
big deal. We're less than 1% of the population ever does an Ironman or a triathlon, let alone. And, we work hard. We work hard day in and day out because we love it. But then when you get that result of, like, I've done a lot of triathlons just for the feeling of that finish line, right? That finish line is a high, right? And then at a finish line in an Ironman, whew, even
Yeah. It's another level.
it's another level. It's another level. And the fact that you did that and you were out there for what was your time? 11,
11, it was exactly 11 and a half hours, like
11:30.
11:30, 19 or something.
Yeah, and so our goal was I think 11:06 or 7, right? So we already
Yeah.
identified where, things could have gone better. If you took 10 minutes off, you'd probably be 11:20 from the
Yeah.
transition, right? With the run. And honestly, if you had paced the run better, I honestly think you could have flip-flopped it and finished stronger. So you
Oh,
might have
yeah.
been a little bit closer, but you don't know what you don't know, right? This is your first one. And even if you never do another one, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. I mean, you always have that, you know what I mean? And can I ask, has it had any like side effects across any other areas of your life as far as what you think is possible now?
Oh, I mean, 100%. I mean, I don't know that I can come up with any specific examples right now, but it definitely has made me reconsider what I think I'm capable of.
Exactly.
Just in any area of my life where it's something that requires um, considerable time and focus, and also realizing that to do anything extremely well at a high level requires that same kind of commitment and
Consistency.
just grinding,
Yeah.
not worrying about the overall um, process or the end result, but just, okay, what's the next thing? I think that's
Focusing on the
something,
journey. Yeah.
yeah.
Focusing on the journey. Yeah,
And
for
that
sure.
was something I set early on in my training was I'm not going to think about the race. Like, back in February, March, April, when I was first starting to gear up, like I'm not going to think about the whole summer of training and all the 100-mile rides and the 20-mile run and the and race day, I'm going to think about today and I'm going to think about this week and what do I have to do this week to
Yeah.
just keep moving on that path.
Just look at your training peaks and say, okay, how much green can I get? Here's my
Yeah.
life. Here's my work schedule. I'm going to hit this, 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 this. Okay, good. I got a good week, right? That's what it takes, right? It's
Yeah.
just consistency, 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 consistency. Well, of course, I'm super duper proud of you. I'm so
Thank
happy
you.
that you chose Full Circle Coaching to work with and help you along this journey. And if I can ask, I mean, there's lots of coaches out there. Would you be willing to share a little bit about why you chose Full Circle Coaching? What makes us a little bit different?
Well, I mean, the number one thing, at least in the beginning, was I trusted that you had the knowledge and experience, having been to your race clinics and listen to you talk about the sport and talk about the races. I knew that you knew what you were talking about,
Right.
and that you would give me the tools that I needed to improve and to finish the races that I wanted to finish. And then, over the years, I've never worked with any other coaches, so I can't like compare.
I'm the
I don't
best.
know what
I'm the best. No,
I
I'm
don't
just
know
kidding.
what they do, but I appreciate the sort of full. I mean, it's full circle, but like the full picture approach that you take. That it's not just like,
Why are you?
yes, hitting your training peaks and getting a lot of green is important, and it's wonderful to see an entirely green week. But there's a lot more to it than just hitting the training. It's the mental approach. It's the nutrition, not just the race nutrition, but the
Daily nutrition?
just what you're eating day to day.
Yeah,
That your whole this isn't separate from your whole life. It's
apart.
something that integrates into it. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your feedback. And there's lots of great coaches out there. I also think the relationship is important. So you and I get along, uh, great personality, like easy to work with, and you communicate with me. That's like the biggest thing. If something goes
And I
wrong,
think I honestly wish I had, like, I always think I could do a little bit better. Like I'm
yeah,
always like, oh, I'm going to start commenting on every workout I do because I can't hit as many of the group workouts as I would like, but I wanted to, I always feel like I could be giving a little bit more feedback. So
I
I'm
mean,
glad to know that I'm at least
oh yeah, believe
hitting the
me, you're way
baseline.
better. You're way better than like I'm, pulling teeth getting the information. But honestly, as long as I was seeing your trajectory was happening, like I knew that you were going to be successful on the journey and the ultimate goal. There was never a time where I was like, sometimes I'm calling people, listen, this race might not happen if you don't, fix you need to show up, right? You need to, not for me, but show up for yourself. And you just showed up for yourself. I really want you to acknowledge that you know how to show up for yourself. You set the goal, you followed the plan. It wasn't perfect, but you know how to motivate yourself. Yes, we were there. Coach Dennis was there for you. I was there. Coach Nico, when you needed us. I had the overall framework, but you delivered. And I just want you to be so proud of yourself because you really rocked it, man. And not many people do an 11:30 for their very first half iron or full Ironman, right?
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, you guys. I hope you enjoyed the journey. If you are interested in doing an Ironman, I would love to help you. DM me, reach out to me. I'm doing a lot of holiday specials over the next few weeks. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and look for a couple more lives that I'll be doing the rest of the year. Thank you so much, Ben. It was great to share your story with everybody.
Thank you. Happy
Okay.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Bye.